Latin America and the Caribbean are central to the climate change conundrum for a couple of really great reasons. I think the first one is that we have been on the front lines of, especially in the Caribbean, many of the storms. The Latin America produces a lot of the food that we use in the region, and they are being impacted by by the change in the weather patterns. We are at the heart and central to this climate discussion. But more than that, it's really important that we understand that there are opportunities that are being created, new solutions. And through these opportunities and new solutions, we cannot, once again, in the global south, be left behind. So we have to be creators, we have to be generators, rather than just the world's customers as it relates to the creation of these new solutions that will help propel us to a beautiful and more optimistic future that we're hoping for. Two of the four that really resonate with us are energy systems for certain, because that represents such a huge opportunity for the Caribbean. We're an area where we have almost the most concentrated level of cost per kilowatt hour for the generation of electricity. You know, Germany is at number one, but the Caribbean is well represented at the top of that list as the most expensive places to generate electricity. And so the energy transition for us isn't just an issue of addressing climate change, of the moral authority to lead the conversation on a global scale, but that energy transition for us is so important to our survival, both in terms of our ability to advance our economies by using the energy that we already have and not being influenced by the rapid changes in the pricing of petrochemicals, but it also helps us to be self-dependent and self-determinant. And that is so incredibly important. The next one is that we are such big ocean states. You know, many of us control economic EEZs that are much larger than our land mass. And so having this amount of ocean to utilize and to protect becomes really core to our economic outlook. So ensuring that our oceans are healthy, ensuring that we are protecting them, and ensuring that we can afford to do that. Because the issue has not been that there's been a lack of desire or incentive to protect our oceans. It is that it's expensive and we haven't had the funding to be able to do it. So we're looking at all kinds of really innovative mechanisms of protecting the region's oceans so that more and more countries can come on board to support 30 by 30 or even more as might be necessary. While we try to focus more optimistically on what the opportunities are, there is no doubt that there are challenges, and the bulk of the challenge is funding the transition. And while it's interesting that there is a huge gap between climate finance and what is necessary, there is a lot of money that's available, but the money that's available is not the kind of money that we can access because that money is a lot of investment money that is seeking commercial returns. We can access commercial money if we have projects that can generate those kinds of returns. But for much of adaptation where there isn't a return, we have a great deal of difficulty in funding it because what we're doing is we are preventing something bad from happening versus enabling additional economic activity. And even when we talk about insurance products, which I think are so important, we're asking countries that are already stretched and already strapped to pay for insurance to protect themselves against hazards created by others. And so it's like saying, listen, we're all on the road driving, and the people with the big cars, they don't have to insure themselves against the damage that they're causing to us. But we have to insure our cars, and our premiums keep going up because there's little consequence on the big cars who hit the little cars. And that's essentially the situation that we find ourselves in, is that we are struggling to fund this transition despite knowing that on the other side, there is a more hopeful and inclusive and healthier future for all of us. We have to find innovative ways of funding the transition, which means that we have to generate a lot more grant and philanthropic funding to the region to help prepare the projects so that they can attract commercial funding. Private investors are very, very interested in funding climate action. And we have no end of investors who come to us looking for projects, looking for investments. The challenge is that many of them call themselves impact investors, and they are looking for commercial returns with low risk. And so we're like, well, so what's the impact in that? If Why would we choose you versus any other commercial entity that doesn't have impact before its name? So I think that there needs to be a greater understanding of what kind of private finance climate action requires, and also to look at the role that philanthropy plays in ensuring that private finance is interested enough and able to come in and able to leverage the work of philanthropy to create even bigger projects, but also understanding that concessions will need to be made, either concessions on risk, and certainly we're looking at a number of different instruments that can help to manage the risk of some of these projects, but additionally, to not look at these projects from a straight capital uh, perspective, because if you're looking at them like that, then you're not really creating impact. You are just adding impact to a commercial arrangement. And so we need to see greater flexibility and innovation in the role of private finance. But I wouldn't say that there is a lack of private finance available. There is a lack of innovation and understanding of what that private finance needs to do in the landscape that we currently have. The challenge with the MDBs is a lot of bureaucracy, and many times we really do understand why they are limited in the ways that they are. But some of the challenges include, the risk that they're able to take on and what it might do to their credit ratings, how long projects take to scope and get approved. There's some banks that are more nimble than others. But in our view, the enemy in this fight that we're on is not climate change. It is time. If we had endless time to address these issues, we would be able to do it. The challenge is that we are up against the clock. And so everyone has to figure out how to move more efficiently, how to be more agile. And these are long standing rules that the MDBs face, but they now have to look through a different lens to think about how do we become more efficient to enable capital to flow more quickly that can help private finance to crowd in and deliver many of these projects that are stuck. I'll tell you a couple of things. The first thing is about a project that we've recently launched that we're really excited about to create new solutions around climate smart agriculture and how to use hydroponics, for example, to decrease the amount of water that we're using, but to have more sustainable yield. And that's really exciting because it helps us to become more food independent, something that many of the Caribbean nations need to do. But it also presents an opportunity to get more young people back into agriculture as they have been leaving in droves over the last few decades and making agriculture exciting. So that's a huge opportunity in creating new agricultural solutions, getting more young people involved in preparing fresh food, having people focus on the production of reliable sources of food and delivering food security. And I see that as a huge opportunity that is untapped. We've rolled out our project in Barbados, uh, Cayman, and Anguilla. And we are hoping to expand to some additional countries as well. But we're also talking to many local providers of hydroponic solutions to see how big can this food solution really get. The accelerator is a nominator for Prince William's Earthshot Prize. And the level of innovation in the projects that we're seeing is absolutely mind boggling. If you look at the Earthshot winners, but as well as many of the submissions from the region, we are encouraged about having the right talent and having the right kinds of ideas, having many of the solutions that we already require. What we need are just minor tweaks in terms of the flow of finances, in terms of the innovation around the institutions that are providing those sources of funding, and then using that to just accelerate our pace to transitioning our economies. And I think we're going to do it. I really do believe that we have been dealing with climate change long before many others were feeling the impacts. We were the canary in the coal mine, and we have decided that we will save ourselves. What would be amazing is if others will join us on this transition and help us in this endeavor. The thing that is most important to me is that we focus on the creation of green jobs in our region and that we build our economies on a um, forward looking momentum. So that means that young people with new solutions, young people with great ideas are using those to develop new solutions that we can use going forward. One of the winners of Earthshot created this bioplastic, a type of packaging using seaweed. And it was just phenomenal. And it was so inspired. And it wasn't just that it was solving a problem, but it was creating a beneficial solution. So, for example, instead of having pasta packaged in plastic, you can have your pasta packaged in this seaweed the seaweed packaging, that then you boil the seaweed with the pasta because the seaweed has nutritional benefits. So rather than having to take seaweed pills separately. So that's the kind of innovation and that's the kind of excitement and hopefulness. And actually we found out that one of our projects within the region was involved in that solution and has been making linkages to add to that solution. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see young people getting more involved, not just in the activism, which is really important, but in the creation of new solutions, in the creation of jobs, in defining the path that we take to our hopeful near future. That's what I want to see more than anything else. The importance of Indigenous peoples' knowledge, they have been the ones who have been protecting the Earth's assets all along. We should have been listening to them from day one about what we require to preserve nature and to take care of our planet that we only have one of. And I was so delighted when I saw the announcement about the COP28 champion and encouraging more participation of Indigenous peoples and them bringing their knowledge to COP. And I think that has been increasing incrementally over the past of the last few COPs. But what I'm hoping for is that we see an explosion of that at COP28 and that we take their guidance to heart. We have so many beautiful indigenous communities within Latin America and the Caribbean, and they have been crying out for us to listen. I think finally we are paying attention.